Hello and welcome to the Lifelong Recreation Travel Show for spring of 2025. I'm Gail Sigurdson. I'm the Lifelong Recreation Supervisor, and it will be my pleasure to join you on some of these trips. I do want to go over a few things that are different this year. One is that we have some Saturday trips, and so that is sometimes in response to the destination telling me it would be a better experience if we came on a Saturday. The other reason is sometimes we're just partnering with something that isn't available except on the weekends. What I'm hoping is that this will allow some of the adult children who have wanted to join a trip to join us because they may not be at work that day. Another thing that's a little different is we have some short half-day trips. The intention here is just it takes less endurance to do half days, and some destinations don't need to be expanded on. They are enough in and of themselves. So a third thing that you'll see different this year is if you pick up the brochure at any of the recreation centers or call me at 832-7909 and I'll get you one. There's a little more detail in the trip description, more specific times and what's included. That is in part to help people with planning ahead of time. If they have to get the dog to the kennel or they know they've got an appointment that afternoon at 4 o'clock, will they be back? You will still get a travel letter that confirms all the details 7 to 10 days before the trip. As far as registration, it's available in person, online, or through the mail. I really recommend in person or online because sometimes trips fill quickly and I don't want the Postal Service to delay your registration. Speaking of delayed registrations, wait lists. Never hesitate to be on a wait list. There's no cost, there's no obligation, and it means that if somebody's plans change, and often they do, then a spot will open up and you can go. That makes them happy that somebody gets the place. It makes you happy you get to go. So please don't hesitate to go on a wait list. Sometimes I can even score some more tickets, and that means more people can join us. The travel letter, as I mentioned, comes out 7 to 10 days before we depart. It will have the final itinerary, noting any changes that have been made since the original plan. It may include a lunch order. If it does, please get back to me as soon as you can. That way everybody gets the lunch that they want. Group size, we'll be keeping our groups to between 12 and 22. This year, we're not doing any overnights or using a motor coach, so that'll keep the groups a little bit smaller. If you have any special needs, and what I mean by that is mobility, you don't want to tackle the stairs of the bus because you usually use a walker, let me know. We have a lift for that. If you're vegetarian or you have other dietary restrictions, we will do our best. And the easiest thing for me is if I know that ahead of time, then I can prepare the destinations as well. Changes, deadlines, cancellations, they all happen. The deadline is printed in the program, and anytime if you have to cancel and you can do it before the deadline, that really helps me out. That means I can give you more of a refund because I haven't already purchased the tickets or I haven't already bought lunch. So if there's a change in your plans, please let me know as soon as you can. One other bit of background info is for those of you who do want to enroll online, you go to lprd.org and you select Enrollment Reservations Shelters at the top. It'll take you to adult programming, and then it'll take you to trips. There's many different paths, but that is a quick one. And now the fun stuff. Let's talk about where we're going. The first stop of the year is called They Were Kansans. And the main destination for this trip is the Safari Museum, which is about Martin and Osa Johnson, and it's based in Chanute, Kansas. Martin and Osa Johnson were documentary filmmakers. They were pioneers in the business. They mostly did their work in Africa and the South Seas. That work changed Kodak. They had to partner with Kodak to get film that would work in the different temperatures and the humidity and the heat. And they also were so popular that most Tarzan movies you see from that era, it's their filming in the background. So this museum is actually the #1 museum in Kansas ranking, and it's one of the top 10 historic sites in the USA. So that is our destination. But before we get there, we're going to have a few other stops because Kansans are frequently catalysts to somebody else's fame, and we want to give credit where that's due. So on the way down to Chanute, we're going to stop in Garnett, Kansas, which was the home of Maynard Walker, who, as soon as he left home, he became a major art dealer in New York City and Hollywood. He was the first to bring together the work of the regionalist painters, Thomas Hart Benton, Grant Wood, and John Stuart Curry. He came up with that pairing and defined that Midwest sensibility. So we are going to stop at the museum that is part of the library in Garnett, Kansas, and learn a little bit about Maynard Walker and see some of the current collection. Another influential person was Octave Chanute, and I first heard of him as an engineer, very instrumental in the bridge building that happened in Kansas City. But he was also very influential in the early days of flight exploration, and he mentored Wilbur and Orville Wright. So we will see an exhibit, actually a sculpture outdoor exhibit in Chanute about Octave Chanute before we go to lunch and then on to the Safari Museum. That is on Wednesday, February 26th. It's a full day from 9 to 5, and the cost is $74. Wonderfully Specific Abilene. I came up with Wonderfully Specific because it turns out that one of our stops, the Greyhound Hall of Fame, is on an international list of wonderfully specific museums. And I think what that means is it's a narrow focus, but they go very deep on that topic. So we're going to have a few of those stops, but our first stop will be the Seeley Mansion. Seeley Mansion is one of the 8 wonders of Kansas architecture, but what I find really captivating about this beautiful Victorian home is the technology in it. This was an early 20th century home, and it has Edison electric light fixtures. It had a telephone intercom system throughout the house. It had an automatic bowling machine in the basement. So it also gives you a sense of how large this house is. They had a bowling alley in the basement. So we'll have a tour of that, guided tour, and our time will include time to go to the Patent Medicine Museum, which is original artifacts from Dr. Seeley. That's how he made his fortune, was in pharmaceuticals. After lunch, we're going to go to the Greyhound Hall of Fame, which focuses on the breed, not just the recent racing history of it, but the breed from ancient times to the present. We'll get to meet a couple of retired racers named Max and Coco and get a little bit of background on the Greyhound. And then our last stop is the Jeff Coat Photography Studio Museum. This photography studio has been in the same family for 4 generations, and they realized that not only is there this shared love of photography, but also they've created quite a record of Abilene throughout those 4 generations. So we will be seeing both the photography exhibit and their current exhibit, which is about the 1960s out in Abilene. And that is on Thursday, March 27th. It's again is a full day and $87. We're going to see Rumors at the New Theater. Those of you who are familiar with the New Theater know it's a fine production and a very good buffet lunch. I chose this play partly because it's Neil Simon and I love Neil Simon, but also the reviews said that the play has nothing on its mind except making the audience laugh. And how can that be bad? So we are going to Rumors at the New Theater on Wednesday, April 2nd. Probably leave around 11:30 and be back about 4. This is going to be a really interesting stop. And we're going to Manhattan, Kansas for celebrating light, art, and design. We're starting at the Historic Costume and Textile Museum. This was recently featured in Kansas Magazine, and it is home to over 15,000 artifacts, all the way from Byzantine era, ethnic textiles, Chinese. They have the largest collection of Nellie Don dresses, military uniforms. It's really fascinating. And because we're going on the weekend, we'll get to see not only the current exhibit, but we'll get to go into the storage and some of the workspace. So we'll get a very good tour from the director of the museum. Then we're going to the brand new museum, first of its kind in the country, and that is the Museum of Art and Light. And it's a 21st century museum. It features digital art and also some physical art. So what that means is 3 stories. The first story is the immersive, as you see in this picture, where they project the paintings on the floor, the ceiling, the walls, all around you. And the exhibit during our visit will be on Renoir. Then the second story of the museum is about digital art, which is different, very new, and we'll see how we feel about that. And then the third is more traditional art. Rather than the cutting edge technology, it is painting, sculpture, and we'll have timed tickets to the Renoir exhibit. And that's 3,600 square feet of Renoir. It's going to be really fabulous. We'll have lunch at the cafe in the Museum of Art and Light. And that is an all-day trip again, Saturday, April 12th, $94. Planes, trains, and automobiles. I told the people at the live meeting that this was partly inspired by an adorable picture of my husband going to Disneyland at the age of 8 and dressed in a suit and tie because he was going on a plane, and planes were very fancy. We know that's not the case anymore, but there's still that history and luxury and the thrill of vintage machines. So I took a page from a group out of Wichita that did this trip, and they drove all the way up from Wichita. So you know it's a very full day. We're going to start at the TWA Museum, where we'll journey through aviation history, from airmail up to passenger travel, and really that golden age of passenger travel when you did wear a suit and tie to get on the airplane. After that, we'll have lunch at Harvey's in Union Station and get a Union Station tour. That's a walking tour of the landmark station, and it's going to talk about not only the train travel, all the soldiers who came and went through Union Station, but also the massacre from the Gangland massacre there and some of the remarkable restoration that brought this station back to life. And then our last stop that day will be at the Kansas City Automotive Museum, where they have a couple of galleries. They have one main gallery, which is a curated collection, and we'll have a guided tour of that. That rotates about 3 or 4 times a year, but the drive-in gallery rotates every month with a different theme, and the theme in April is going to be the Ford Mustang. So I am excited about that. It's one of the few vintage cars I have opinions on. So we were going to see planes, trains, and automobiles on Thursday, April 24th. Full day again, $108 includes lunch. Crown B Bison Ranch, many of you know we tried this last year and we got rained out. So we're going to try again. And one thing we're going to do is go a little later in the season. 2 reasons: might miss some of the rain, but also it'll be calving season. So we'll get to not only meet the bison herd, we'll get to visit some of the calves. And those are called red dogs because apparently they're born a cinnamon color and then mature into more of the browns that we're familiar with. You want to be prepared on this trip for being in the pasture. So uneven ground, there's about an 18-inch step up into the trailer, and you get pretty close to the bison. So make sure you're comfortable with that. This is one of our half-day trips. It's on Tuesday, May 27th, and we're just going to go in the morning, and you'll be back for your own lunch at home. Here's a trip that we're partnering with the Kaw Valley Area Quilters Group, and we are going to the Kansas City Regional Quilt Festival. It's a huge festival. This is the 10th year of it. And of course, there's award-winning quilters, but there's also educators and vendors for all skill levels. So if you have been quilting for decades or you're decided this is going to be your new retirement skill, this will be a very full day. Our admission includes the vendor floor, the special quilt exhibits, and the quilt show. So that will be a full day, 9 to 5, Saturday, June 14th. And then our last day trip of this season is to Long Lips Farm. And Long Lips Farm is a 2-acre English estate style garden that has been designed specifically for pollinators. It's recognized by 3 national organizations for its wildlife conservation. And it just kind of blends that elegance with the ecological impact. And the reason we're going in June is she said she doesn't allow anybody to come to her until all the pollinators are happy and out. So it should be a very engaging tour. I've talked to a few people who have been there and they said Lenora, who will be our host, is just charming. And we will spend just the morning because it is the end of June and we don't want to be out in too much heat. So plan on Tuesday, June 24th, we'll go tour the Long Lips Farm. We have 3 field trips today. For those of you who are new to our program, field trips are local, usually within Douglas County. The first is the Boyd Prairie, which is a treat for both conservationists and historians. So whatever your favorite interest is, we've got something for you on this trip. I'm very pleased that Rex Buchanan, the Director Emeritus of the Kansas Geological Survey, has agreed to be our guide, and he's going to take us out to the Boyd Prairie, introduce us to the native grasses and the wildflowers, but also take advantage of the chance to see the best remaining ruts carved from the historic Santa Fe Trail. So that will be a morning trip on Tuesday, April 29th from 9 to 12:30. Trees of South Park. This is we always do at least one tree tour. And this one it sounds really familiar, but you're also going to see something we've never offered before. So South Park is officially an arboretum. It has 32 different types of trees in it. And our day will start in South Park and we'll go around the whole park, get an introduction to the trees, their distinctive characteristics, the biology and the history of all of them. And then there's a special surprise performance at the end of the day. Can't say much more about it because then it wouldn't be a surprise. But trust me, it's something you haven't seen before and it will be very entertaining. That's on Saturday, May 3rd. And our last day field trip of the year, spring, is Mass Street Potpourri. We're joining Dr. Bob Dinsdale again. Dr. Bob's taken us on quite a few local history trips. And this will be on Mass Street, which was the subject of his recently published book. So we will start at one end of Mass Street and we will walk all the way down to the other and learn about not only what's there now, but what used to be there and some of the history that happened. For example, the 4 attempts to agree on a state constitution, the Civil War, the presidential assassination, and of course, Quantrell's raid. Everything that has affected Mass Street through the years will be part of that tour on Wednesday, May 7th. We do have 2 upcoming trips with Colette Tours. One is a domestic trip, Discover Canyon Country, which is Grand Canyon and also other Zion National Park. That is in September. And then Discover British Landscapes is our international trip next spring. Features England, Scotland, and Wales. Gina from Colette was at our live meeting and talked a little bit about these. Please call me, and I'm very happy to send you a link to a detailed itinerary and answer any questions for you. My number again is 785-832-7909. And that's our travel show for this spring. I hope you can join us, and I look forward to seeing you.